Frontier by Maggot Moshpit, Chapter 27. The mornings were never kind to Grace. When breakfast was served, the guards would rattle their nightsticks along the bars of her cell, jarring her from her sleep very uncomfortably. As the only Atrian in the entire prison, she was often the victim of daily harassments from other inmates and even the guards. This morning was no exception, quite to the contrary.
Wake up, pussycat! Time for food!
A large woman in a smart-looking prison guard uniform banged on Grace's cell door. Grace stumbled to her feet and banged back.
"I'm awake,"
she said in Atrian. The prison guard frowned.
Now, what do we tell you about speaking Atrian here? Personally, I don't care. But the other prisoners do. English!
Grace rolled her eyes, making sure the guard couldn't see her through the small window as she did.
"All right, now let me out."
The guard snickered and pressed a button by the door with her keycard, walking down the catwalk to the next cell, Grace's door opening with a buzz. Grace threw on some clothes and stepped out of her cell. The prison was very old, one of the first penal colonies to ever be constructed by the Solar Federation. There were 8 different facilities on the planet, 3 for women and 5 for men. Although the interiors of the prisons themselves were relatively low-tech, with metal doors instead of force fields, there was always 2 Solar Federation cutter-class ships in orbit, and a security field around each facility. She looked down from the catwalk at the assembly of women eating the admittedly decent-tasting prison food, though none of the other prisoners would agree with her on that point. Grace descended the ladder nimbly, her natural cat-like agility coming from the fact that she was just that, a cat. A snow leopard, to be exact. She took a seat next to 2 of her only friends, a very loose definition of the word. There was a massive woman with tattoos all over her right arm, no hair, and a grin on her face, and the other silent and muscular, but looked almost normal despite her prison clothes.
"Hey, pussycat! The slop has been served, and yours is getting warm."
Grace sat down, and her food rose from a small hatch in the table. She grabbed it and placed it in front of her. The food delivery system was supposed to ensure everyone got an equal share of food, but once it was out of the hatch, it was fair game for anyone.
"Big Jess, how many death threats this time?"
Jess nudged her roughly.
3. All of them empty.
Grace shoveled her food into her mouth. Most of her fellow prisoners hated Atrians, for one reason or another, but none of them dared to tangle with Grace because of her background as a military commander. She served throughout most of the war, earned a plethora of medals, and in the last month of the conflict was taken prisoner by the Solar Federation. All POWs were supposed to be released, but for some reason or another, she was taken to the cage, as it was referred to, and in the cage she stayed. The other woman finally spoke up.
"Has your dad rescued you yet?"
Grace punched her in the arm, wishing they hadn't removed her claws.
"Shut up, Sarah. He's probably in prison himself by now."
Big Jess nabbed a roll of bread from Grace's tray.
"If he does so, you better spring us too."
Grace ignored the comment, as she had already given up on being freed from her unjust imprisonment. Lef sat down in the cockpit, waking himself up for another day of flying in a straight line. Zack was there, whistling an Earth pop song and sipping his morning coffee. Lena walked briskly into the room, kissed Lef on the cheek, and sat down in the pilot seat, checking their course and speed.
"Hey, Lef, guess what?
What?
She beamed at him.
I turned 20 the other day."
Now just age another 4 years and you'll be as old as me.
Zack clapped his hands.
"We should have a party."
They both looked at him blankly, until Lena clapped her paws in realization.
"Oh, that's right. Humans celebrate the day of their birth."
Zack nodded.
"Yeah, I used to have them when I was a kid, but my parents stopped after we moved to the moon."
Lef tilted his head, still confused.
Yeah, that always bothered me. Why would you celebrate an occasion you couldn't possibly remember?
Zack shrugged.
I don't know, but you get presents."
Lena looked at Lef with a grin.
"I like the sound of that."
Sir Leah's station beeped, and Lef walked over to check it out.
It's going to have to wait, Peach. Looks like we're being hailed.
He answered.
This is the cargo vessel of the Frontier. How can we help you?
Yeah, hello. Sorry to bother you, but our singularity generator's down, cut out in flight, and we can't get to a station on a photon power. Could you give us a hand?
Lef frowned at the strange contents of the sentence. Photon power, singularity generator. It was probably a human vessel.
Of course. Give us your coordinates.
They came over in text, so Lef didn't have to memorize them. Then the line cut.
Zack, get Feldo and Sir Leah. Lena, take us to those coordinates.
Done. ETA, half an hour.
Left nodded as Zack walked out. Then he stood and leaned against Lena's console.
So, have you thought about what you want to do after you get to Eden? We're less than a month away.
She turned her chair so she was facing him.
Well, I've been taking online classes, as you know, and it looks like I'll get a proficiency from that in a couple of years. Physics, maybe. Until then, I want to stay here with you.
Left blushed despite himself.
I'd like that.
Zack burst in, breaking the moment. He was dragging a half-asleep Serlia and an annoyed Feldo behind him. Serlia slumped in her chair and yawned.
Are we answering another distress call? This won't end well, mark my words.
Feldo slumped at his station as well, low on energy like Serlia was.
It's nice to help people in need. If it turns out to be pirates, I'll give you a cookie.
Serlia chuckled at his response.
Well, you'd better pay up.
A few minutes later, the Frontier dropped out of hyperspace nearby a fairly large cargo ship. It was a newer model than the Frontier, despite the fact that it was the one experiencing problems. Serlia hailed them and switched the channel over to Left's screen.
Hello? Any new developments?
The screen flickered slightly, and the face of a man appeared. He was unshaven and sweaty, and looked like he really needed a bath.
I'm glad you're finally here. We just narrowly avoided a singularity breach. We could really use some extra help. Hurry!
Left stood.
Alright, be right there. Serlia, you, Zack, and Feldo go aboard. Help them the best you can, and if we have to tow them, we will.
Serlia nodded and led the two out the door. Lena looked at him worriedly.
If they have a singularity breach and we're nearby, we'll get sucked into the implosion.
Left sat back down and folded his paws in front of him.
I know, Peach. I know.
Serlia, Feldo, and Zack piled into a shuttle and flew the short distance to the other ship. Upon arriving, they were greeted by a very unkempt man wearing nothing but overalls. Despite his appearance and the situation they were in, the ship didn't seem too hectic or smoky. Zack stepped forward.
How can we help you?
The man wiped his brow, though the temperature wasn't very high in this part of the ship.
Come on down to engineering. I'll show you.
They walked and listened to a long-winded explanation of what was wrong. Serlia couldn't understand a single thing the man said, but Feldo and Zack nodded solemnly.
This sounds bad.
Nothing we can't handle.
The man clapped his hands.
Great!
However, it became abundantly clear exactly what the problem was as soon as they entered the engine room. Left was sitting, quietly reading the scans of the other ship. A faint tickle in the back of his mind made him stop and shake his head.
Weird.
Lena looked up.
What is it?
He pulled up a previous window of information from the scan and reread it.
Wait, did they say they had a photon sublight engine?
Lena nodded. Something was forming in Left's head.
And what kind of faster-than-light drive do they have?
Lena tilted her head in thought.
Well, where our ship creates a subspace bubble, then decreases the mass of the ship to go faster than light, they use some kind of wormhole generator to shorten the distance between A and B.
And they need to create a singularity to do it?
Lena smiled, going full physics nerd mode.
Technically, it isn't really a singularity. It's pretty darn dense. A dirty singularity. Similar to how our ships don't actually acquire a mass of zero.
Lev could feel something at play here other than his own brain, and he was glad he wasn't passing out.
So, if their faster-than-light drive was to go down, what would happen?
The wormhole would collapse, and they would drop out at somewhere in between. That's what happened here.
Lev started another scan.
What radiation would such an event produce?
Lena gave the question some thought.
I guess a lot of it. None that would harm us. The area where the wormhole collapsed would continue to release radiation that was inside at the time. Why? What's all this about?
Lev stood abruptly.
The scans show no radiation whatsoever. None from the wormhole, none from the photon engines.
Lena shrugged, but gulped nervously.
Well, who knows how long they've been out here? Could they have been a while?
Lev hurried over to Serlia's console.
And they happened to have a close call like that right when we were en route? Something's fishy about this situation.
He hailed the ship.
This is Lev, Captain of the Frontier. I'd like to speak with my people.
There was no response.
That isn't a good sign.
Lev routed the comm to the weapons station, continuing the hail.
Peach, things might get hot. Keep calm.
All right.
Lev reopened the channel.
Let me speak to my first officer now.
There was still no response. Lev gripped the weapons controls. Something told him something was very, very wrong on that ship.
please respond.
Sirlia, Zack, and Feldo stepped into the perfectly operational engine room, facing down the barrels of 8 guns pointed at them. The man who was escorting them had conveniently ushered them inside first, and he now held a pistol and pressed it against Sirlia's back.
Sorry about this. We needed the money.
He prodded her back and moved all 3 of them deeper into the engine room, the other 8 keeping their weapons trained on them as they were pushed into a corner.
I really don't want to do this. Don't worry, I was promised you wouldn't be hurt.
Sirlia fixed him with a cold stare.
Do you really think someone who says that is telling the truth?
Someone hurried in and addressed the man in the overalls.
Henry, the captain of the Frontier wants to speak with his first officer. I think he knows.
You didn't answer, did you?
No?
Good.
Henry regarded the 3 prisoners briefly and walked out the door. Leff finally received a response.
Hey, I've been calling for an hour.
Henry appeared on the screen beside the weapon panel.
I'm sorry, but we've taken you people hostage.
Leff's eyes widened, then he growled.
What? You... Give them back now!
Henry chuckled at Leff's lame attempt.
No. Make any move and we'll blow them out an airlock.
Lena was covering her mouth in shock, but she shakily came over and stood next to Leff. Leff slammed his paw on the table.
Well, you've got us by the balls then. What the hell do you want?
Well, nothing. Just stay there and don't try to leave, and don't send any transmissions. You're being jammed anyway.
That's it? What are we... Hey, he cut the line!
Leff slammed the keyboard again and stood, pacing the cockpit furiously.
We have to do something.
Lena stopped his pacing by grabbing both his arms.
Wait! Didn't you hear him? If we do anything, they'll kill them!
Leff stood, drawing deep, angry breaths. It was frustrating situations like these he just couldn't stand.
But we can't just... do nothing. They might be hurt.
Lena spoke softly, as to encourage Leff to do the same.
Calm down. Making a rash move will make things worse. And you were the one telling me to calm down.
Leff took a deep breath and unclenched his fists.
Sorry.
He slumped in his chair, at a loss for what to do.
So, we just wait? Should we tell Rackham?
I'll let him know. He'll kill you if we keep him in the dark. You just... don't act before thinking.
She patted Leff on the shoulder, and he grabbed her paw.
You're being awfully confident.
Well, I'm actually barely keeping my composure. But what we have to do is clear.
Leff nodded and let go of her paw.
I wonder how Rackham will react.
An entire day passed before something happened. Zack, Feldo, and Sirlia were not mistreated, but Leff couldn't think of a single thing to do that wouldn't jeopardize the lives of his friends. That afternoon, he, Lena, and Rackham were sitting at the cockpit, waiting. Time passed agonizingly slow, until eventually the sensors picked up another ship. Leff watched it streak in from where they had just come from. He wanted to hail them, but their transmissions were being jammed. However, it seemed, this ship was what they were waiting for, as it slowly flew in and began to dock with the Frontier. Puzzled, Leff stood.
Lena, let's greet them.
Who could it be?
They walked down the hall towards the airlock.
I don't know. I don't have any enemies.
They walked into the room and heard the other ship lock onto the airlock. Leff took Lena's paw.
Be ready for anything, Peach.
The figure that stepped out of the airlock certainly was not what Leff was expecting. He was very thin-looking and wearing a sort of coat which ran down to his boots. His face was what Leff could only describe as tired-looking, and he was wearing a large brimmed hat that covered his eyes. Though from his fur color and tail it was clear he was some sort of feline Atrian. He carried an unreasonably long pistol, but he didn't raise it when he spoke to the pair.
Hello, Mr. Quill. I'm here for something of mine.
Leff raised an eyebrow.
And just what is that?
I'm here to take my ship back.
Leff and Lena stood there for a shocked moment until Leff started laughing.
Your ship? I still have the receipt, you know.
The man walked closer, his eyes becoming visible. Leff and Lena both noticed they were heterochromatic. One eye was gray, while the other was white, blind.
Yes, but I was never one for the rules. Who do you think paid for all of this stuff? The fighters? The drive? The coffee machine?
Leff was a little more than intimidated by this man, and Lena had taken up position behind Leff, grasping his paw very tightly.
So you owned this ship before me?
He brushed by them, indicating they should follow him.
I never meant to sell it. I got sloppy on the moon and had to go into hiding. A ship without ID numbers in a junkyard is less noticeable than a ship without ID numbers parked in a spaceport. I just never anticipated anyone would actually buy the piece of junk. So I must commend you for your taste in spacecraft, Mr. Quill.
Yeah. But why would you want it back? It's still a piece of junk, even with our combined modifications.
He whirled on them, and both suppressed whimpers.
What? What have you done to her?
Just some safety retrofitting.
He narrowed his eyes at Lef.
I would have taken you for the kind of man to add guns. People do that too much without a care for the power drain it might have. Regardless, my reasons are partly sentimental and partly bred from necessity. I stored some things here. I need them back.
Lena spoke up from behind Lef.
Then will you leave?
He regarded her, as if for the first time.
You're awfully young to be the first officer. One of the colonists?
The pilot, sir!
He hummed and stopped in front of the colonists' cargo bay living space.
Well, little Fennec, like I said, it's also partly sentimental value.
He opened the panel beside the door and flipped down the manual override, shutting the bulkhead.
What are you doing?
He continued on to the cockpit.
Where we're going, the colonists will just be added weight. I'm cutting them loose.
Lef grabbed his arm, but the man didn't react.
Are you crazy? They only have enough air for an hour tops!
Fool. Henry will dock with the module and supply it with air. I am not a murderer, Mr. Quill. However, I have your people, and I need your help more than I need to keep from becoming a murderer.
I'm not helping you.
The strange man chuckled dryly.
Of course.
The gun was out in a flash, the barrel barely a millimeter from Lena's eye.
Don't help me then.
Lena tried not to move, and Lef raised his paws.
Okay. Where are we going?
The gun was away as quick as it appeared. The man was so light-footed, he practically floated over to the engineering station and removed a panel. He flipped a few switches, and they felt the colonist section get blown away from the ship. The man opened a channel.
Henry, collect the colonists and bring me the rest of the crew. Keep those colonists safe, but don't open the bulkhead. If I don't come back within a week, leave them with a distress beacon.
He didn't wait for an answer, though no one would have dared refuse him. He walked over to the captain's chair.
Well, this is a nice addition, though I will be taking the helm. I used to fly this ship in the military. It was a troop transport designed to hold hundreds of soldiers. I was forced to fight with them more than once. Damn it. No matter. As soon as your people are here, we're setting course for Alpha Ceti Penal Colony.
Why? What's there?
That is none of your concern. All you need to do is help me with a jailbreak.
A jailbreak? You're insane! How are we supposed to get past all the security?
I have the access codes. They're in the main computer.
Lef walked up to the man and stared him down.
This trip has taken us 6 months. In those 6 months, we've been fucked with by drug dealers, pirates, the government, cultists, aliens, bounty hunters, treasure hunters, my crazy ex-wife. I have lost my patience for you people, but you do have a gun to our heads, so I'll cooperate under duress. But you better know what you're doing, because if you hurt any one of the hairs on my crew's head, you'll see a man get mean.
The man smiled slightly.
I believe you. And don't worry, I have only one goal. And whether or not you believe me, it's for a good cause.
Right.
Now, let me send a message. You can call me Gray, though most humans I've met call me Angel Eyes. For some reason.
Grace was sitting down for dinner after having to be separated from another prisoner who had tried to stab her with a shiv. She got off with a bruise from the guard's stick, but the other prisoner had a broken nose and a black eye. She sipped her soup and noticed someone had dropped a paper cup next to her plate. It held a scrap of empty paper. She quickly gulped down her soup and ran to her cell, holding the paper to her bedside lamp. A message appeared and began to burn away under the light. 2 days. Red hair, it said, before dissolving completely.